Hello, people. I'm Diwen from Michigan, and I'll be your chair this session. So in this session, we will be there are a couple of talks on internet advertisement and tracking. The first speaker, Johan from Wisconsin Madison. Please give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming. So today, I'm going to tell you a story about my evaluation of the Topics API, which is Google's proposal to replace and deprecate third-party cookies online in Chrome, but while still enabling targeted advertising. Here's an overview at high level how it works. Google proposes that your web browser classify locally your browsing history into broad categories. And then these broad categories get reported to advertisers embedded on the website that the user is visiting. Google claims, supposedly, that those topics are good enough signal for advertisers to then carry out ad auctions and show users targeted ads. In details, topics can be broken down in two components. The first stage, which is a classification stage, where Google proposes that your web browser every week is going to take locally your browsing history and classify it into a profile of 5 topics. This is a profile that is assigned to every user for every week. How does this classification happen? Well, Google releases for that a fixed taxonomy of topics, about 350 topics for version 1, and now in version 2 we have about 650 topics. For the classification to happen, the fully qualified domain names of the URLs on the website the user is visiting is only taken into account, and then is compared to a static mapping. This is a list of domains that has been manually annotated by Google from domain to corresponding topics. It's in the thousands of domains. If the domain is not present in that list, a topics classifier gets called to run an inference and output the corresponding topics. So on the right here, you see a few examples of classification and topics. Then at the bottom, we have the reporting stage. When a user visits a website and an advertiser is embedded on that website and calling the Topics API, then this advertiser can observe a maximum of 3 topics. 1 topic for each one of the last 3 weeks. And for each of this week, a randomized response mechanism gets triggered, as shown on the slide. 95% of the time for that week, a true topic from the topics profile of the user gets reported to the advertiser, and 5% of the time, your web browser is going to report a noisy topic to the advertiser that has been uniformly sampled from the taxonomy. So, along with the proposal, Google released and stated a few goals, mainly 4. Which are along privacy, utility, and usability. At high level, or to sum up those goals, Google claimed that with the Topics API, advertisers and third parties shouldn't be able to track users across websites because third-party cookies are deprecated, while still enabling and retaining some utility for advertisers, and then they mentioned some usability. However, in the initial white paper and in the evaluation that were performed by Google when the proposal came out, Google itself failed to quantify their own goals. And for instance, for the privacy aspect, they only considered the information leakage in that first white paper, and they only report aggregated and average metrics, when we know that in privacy, we want to see the full distribution of those metrics across the full population. So we observe a lack of systematic and reproducible evaluation, and why I'm saying that this is important is because Google reported those results reported by Google were done on a private data set that us as researchers we cannot reproduce. Utility and usability were totally left unexplored, and so there was a disconnect between Google's claim and Google's evaluation. So us as researchers, we ask ourselves, my advisor, how can we evaluate the Topics API in this context? So there are a few challenges. We want to do this. We want to do a systematic evaluation of the proposal from top to notch, and we want to do it in a reproducible manner. And on top of that, we don't have access to real browsing history or even real data. So First, we started by redefining the goals that Google stated to make them actually measurable and quantifiable. This is the first step. Then we took the specification of the proposal and evaluated from a statistical perspective and made a few observations on and identified a few limitations that could lead to some privacy issues. We completed our analysis with some measurement and as well with an empirical analysis considering and evaluating the utility and the privacy of the topics API in a worst case scenario. So next, for the rest of the talk, I'm going to give you a few insights about our evaluation. So first, we observe that repetition in the topics that are reported to advertisers actually leak the nature of the topic, if it's a noisy one or a genuine one. Why do we want to do that? Well, this is the first step as an advertiser to if an advertiser wants to re-identify users across websites, the first step would be to try to remove that noise that is being added by the proposal or by Chrome in the mechanism. So here's an example on the left where we can see for a user in our simulation, the topics that are reported across the weeks. For the first week here, we can mark and flag the book topic or reading topic as genuine already because there's a repetition in that first week, and this is statistically almost impossible if you run out the math. If this were to happen randomly, this is almost impossible. And then we keep going and we observe topics in consecutive weeks, and then for any topic that we keep observing over non-overlapping weeks, we can also mark them as genuine according to how the proposal works. And so we observe that repetition leak genuine topics, and this happens in the worst case scenario where users' profile are fully stable across weeks. So this is the assumption we're going to make for the rest of the evaluation, and that's why we do a worst case analysis. On top of that, this assumption let us overcome the fact that we don't have access to real data, because if we consider user profile to be stable across weeks, we only need to figure out how to generate a profile for the first week for that user, and we can fix it across weeks. So this let us use a synthetic data generation, where to generate all those browsing history, we actually based our results on a decade of prior work in web measurement studies, and even on papers that collaborated with Google to report overall and general statistics about their own private data set. So then on the right, we have a second observation that we made. So with a measurement study, we actually classify the top 1 million domains with the topics classifier. And here what we can see is that we have about 48 topics from the taxonomy of 350 that never appear on the web, essentially, because this is the top 1 million. So what does that mean is that as an advertiser, if I see any of those topics that is reported to me by the user that visited our website where I'm embedded on, I can immediately flag it as noisy. And so then we can expand it and build a binary classifier with just putting a threshold. So in the paper, we use several thresholds, and then we land on the threshold of 10 websites. So if a topic has never been seen on more than 10 websites on the top 1 million, we consider it as noisy. And then, so using those two observations, two facts, we are able to actually remove about 25% of the noisy topic at first observation, and this performance or accuracy improves over observation. I will defer to the paper for the exact results. So next, we want to figure out, can we actually identify users and fingerprint users with topics? For that, here's a traditional re-identification experiment where we have two websites, and on each website, we have an advertiser that is embedded. And then the assumption is that those advertisers embedded on each corresponding website are going to call topics across weeks, and then each user visits both websites, and then the advertiser are colluding and trying to re-identify which visit identifier on the first website corresponds to which visit identifier on the second website. Our analysis and our synthetic data generation approach allow us to actually study the topics' privacy guarantees over time in a general simulation. So on the right, when one advertiser on the left identify so we measure in terms of K anonymity actually, this privacy guarantee. So if K equal 1 here, this means that the user was uniquely identified by the advertiser. And then if the advertiser was only able to match the user to a group of size K larger than 1, we record it. And here you have a cumulative distribution function across the weeks. And what that means, this is actually quantifying the exact goal that Google had made, or the claim that they had made on their proposal. So here, with this graph, we can answer that question: how difficult it is to identify users across website. Difficulty in terms of like observations, and significant numbers in terms of key anonymity. So here I'm going to give you how to a result. So here, if you look here, it means that for 10 epoch, so for 10 observation, we cannot guarantee more than 10 anonymity to the 250K users that we simulate in our simulation. So over 60% of the users cannot be guaranteed strictly more than 10 anonymity. On top of that, in our paper, we do also a utility analysis where we compare the classification of we compare the accuracy and the performance of the machine learning classification. Here's the high-level bit that at least one true topic is aligned with the ground truth in about 60% of the cases. So some utility is retained, but while we do that, we actually find a way or like a vector towards potential abuse of the API. And so we craft this experiment where we craft subdomains that correspond to the corresponding topics, and we evaluate if a publisher could actually force some topic to appear in the top profile of the users. So this will be the first step. When we reported our results to Google, they replied publicly that they failed to address the limitation we pointed at, but pointed out instead to the assumption of our worst-case analysis. So, and they claim that at Google Research, they actually do evaluation on real data. So let's do real data. So we have a follow-up analysis where we actually replicate this evaluation that appeared at PES this year on real data. So we have a data set about 1,000 users, and we measure how stable and unique the topics are on a real data set, and we find, again, results where we can identify users across website. So to sum up, we can actually use the topics API to fingerprint users, and on the utility side, while utility is retained, the classification can be manipulated. And we call, actually, on the web vendors, such as Google, to enable reproducible evaluation by actually releasing topic distribution, a test bed or data set, so that we can actually have a discussion with the rest of the community. Here are the publication and the artifact. Everything is reproducible, and I invite you to actually also attend the talk tomorrow that I'm going to give at Hotpets about the need for a research sandstorm through the privacy sandbox. Thank you.
Our speaker. Any question? We have time for a couple of questions. Okay, so I'm going to ask one. You are using this the combination of topics as a way to effectively fingerprint users. Do users' interests change over time?
So in our worst-case analysis, we consider that they are fully stable across time. But in that follow-up work, we actually measure on that real data set how stable they are. And our results are that at least 3 topics out of the 5 are fully stable for like a majority, like half of the data set. And this is actually aligned with results from web measurement studies that were done in the past. So I guess this goes back to the title of my paper, which is Interest Disclosing Mechanism for Advertising are Privacy Exposing and Not Preserving, like Google claimed. Because at the end of the day, topics is just a mapping between browsing history to categories. And the initial source of information, we know that web behaviors of users are actually stable and unique. And this mapping is correlate to that and output stable and unique topics as well. So we can abuse that fact or that property to like identify users. And I wanted to add on top of that, that in this analysis, we only consider topics, but we can, advertisers could actually correlate topics with other fingerprinting vectors and actually improve the accuracy of the re-identification even more.
Did Google say anything about why they are not making this data they use public? And if they say, hey, it's for privacy reasons, do you buy it?
So yeah, so the evaluation of the primary evaluation from Google are done on their private data set of like Chrome telemetry data. So they don't want to release that for obvious privacy reasons. But however, I'm trying to like get in contact with the privacy team and like the research team at Google to actually work towards building either a taste bed or like having them classify those real browsing history into topics. And then once they get a representative distribution of real topics, we can actually, they could like sample a synthetic data set. And the hope is that Google and the research community could agree on a test bed or a data set to use, and then we would agree as well on like privacy and utility metrics, and then we could have actually an argumented discussion about those claims, which we can't at the moment.
Yeah, we can have one more question while our next speaker.
Thank you for the talk. Google is claiming basically that compared to the current situation with the cookies, the situation is so much better, and also compared to the what they were having before, this is improvement in the right direction. Are you really worried of the fingerprinting? Are you not, or should the main worry be about Google actually just creating more monopoly in the whole advertising and tracking industry?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question. I think at the moment, we don't even know if topics is even better than third-party cookies. And like those first papers point to that could be a little bit, but like we could probably do way better as researchers. And so there's a lack of true understanding of like the trade-offs that are being made in this in essence tool that Google is proposing as part of the Privacy Sandbox initiative. And I think those are exciting times because we have a major web vendor that committed to do things and modification to make things more private for users. And so I think this is a time for like the research community to hold Google accountable to their own claims. And I'm very afraid that with topics, if we stay there, we will fall short and miss a huge opportunity to actually have real impact on real users.
Let's thank our speakers again.